What's up guys, AnxiousCynic here with another Blender tutorial, and today we're going to show how to make a 3D Minecraft character from scratch using a Minecraft texture. This is going to use techniques similar to what I showed in my 3D custom item tutorial, so if you haven't watched that, I recommend you go check it out to make sure you have everything in Blender set up the way you'd want it. But besides that, let's go ahead and move on. So we're just going to go ahead and get rid of the splash screen. We're going to hit delete and get rid of that dang old cube there. And one thing I want to do is go to the world tab, and we're going to turn on environment lighting so that we can actually see what we're doing here. So I don't know if I already said or not, but we're going to be staying in Blender render this time. The 3D custom item tutorial was in cycles, and we're going to show how to accomplish the same thing in Blender render today. So what we're going to do is use the same image as planes importing. So I'm going to hit Shift A, we're going to go to Mesh, and then Images as Planes. If you don't have this enabled, it's in the add-ons. I showed it in the other tutorial, so again, if you don't know what I'm doing here, check that tutorial out and catch on up with us. Alright, so I'm just going to go and find a Minecraft skin. I'm going to use my own for this tutorial, and we're going to dang old make a 3D model out of it. Alright, so here we go. This is my skin, and I'm going to import images as planes, and then we get this dang old image down here. We're going to come over here and make this a material view so that we can actually see what's going on. And as you can see there, it's my skin. And what we're going to do, this is actually a really small image. So what I'm going to do is scale it up. I'm going to hit S to scale, and then I'm going to hit the number 5 on my keyboard and hit enter to accept that. But one thing I want to go ahead and do before we get started here is we're going to come down to object and go to apply, and we're going to apply the scale. Now I'm going to not do it for a second here and show you. If I hit Alt S, that means I'm resetting the scale. If you watch my Blender's beginner guide thing, I messed that up, but that series I talked about this and that. You can use it for your animations and whatnot to reset rotation and stuff. Anyway, in this case, it's actually resetting the scale, and we don't want that to happen. So I'm going to hit Control Z to undo, and when I come down here and go to apply, I'm going to hit apply the scale, and then that should make it when I hit Alt S, nothing happens because this is our default scale now, and Blender knows that this is the size we want this to be forever. Another thing I'm going to do is hit the number 1 key on my numpad, and this is the front view. As you can see here, front perspective, because we're in perspective as well. I'm going to hit R to rotate, Z, and we're going to just try to get this turned around. It's going to be about -90, enter, and then I'm also going to apply the rotation, so that way we don't accidentally reset that. So when I apply that, now we can't Alt R to reset that back to how it was, and this is going to be our default thing from now on. Hopefully you understand that. Sorry if that was confusing, but that's what we're going to go with. And we're going to go to 0 on the numpad. I'm going to drag our camera around by hitting Shift F and then controlling it like a first-person shooter. I'm going to click to accept that, and I'm just going to render real quick and show you what we got here. So that's what we end up with. This is not what we want. Blender doesn't know how to display this texture, and it looks terrible. So with this selected, I'm going to go over here to the Materials tab, or actually it's going to be the Textures tab, I think. We're going to come over here. We're going to go to Image Sampling, and as far as I know, all we need to do is disable Interpolation, and we're going to go to Filter and make it Area. Now, I'm not 100% sure if these are the exact things you need. In my experience, this is what does it. So we're just going to render it and see if that helped us. And there you go, it's a pristine image and it's good to go. As far as I know, that's all you need to do, but maybe someone else who knows better can correct us on that. So now that we've got everything set up, we can actually begin to make our model. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually save our project so we don't lose anything. I'm going to hit Control S to save, and then we're just going to make this our dang old model. And we're just going to save that. And there we go. Now we've got our thing saved so we don't lose any progress if Blender were to crash. I highly recommend saving frequently when you're working with any program like this. Okay, so we're going to hit Tab to go into edit mode, and as you can see, we only have 4 vertices. We are in vertices select mode, as you can tell. So what we're going to do is hit W to subdivide, and we're just going to do this a number of times until we can get each of these areas in its own section, and this is pretty well it. You can see here that it's the size of the head section. You can make it smaller if you want to, but I think we're good with this. And what I'm going to do is hit A to get rid of the selection there, and I'm going to go to face select mode, and I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of these unnecessary faces here. I don't really know if you need to do this, but this is a way to kind of do that. I think we're actually going to have to make this a little bit smaller, unfortunately. So we'll just go ahead and see if we can get rid of those. We're going to hit X, and we're going to get rid of faces, and we should be good there, but we actually need to get rid of these too, so I'm going to have to subdivide this a bit more. So hit A to deselect, A to select everything. I don't know if you need to do that, but that's what we're going to do. W, subdivide, and then now we have the actual individual squares that we need. Sorry about that. So we're just going to go ahead and select all these empty ones by holding the shift key and clicking on all of them, and we should be good to go there. We don't need any of those, so I'm going to hit X and faces, and then now we're only left with the parts of the mesh, the plane that we had initially that we need to actually have the texture on it. So what we're going to do is actually be folding this into a 3D model. Now, I don't know if this is the most efficient or best way to go about it. I'm pretty sure it's not, but to me it's fun because it's like a what you see is what you get kind of scenario. You're not modeling a blank canvas and then having to apply a texture to it. You're using the texture and kind of molding it to the model that you want. So I thought it was pretty fun and cool, and that's why I wanted to share it with you guys. So what we're going to have to do is separate all these parts into their own individual sections. So we're going to go into edit mode by hitting tab, and then all I'm going to do is just select everything that we need for each part. So I'm going to hit the C key to bring up the selection tool. You can use the box select if you want to, whatever you want to do. And now that that's selected, I'm going to right click to get rid of the selection tool. I'm going to hit the P key, and I'm going to go to selection here. It says separate, so we're going to separate this selection. So when I do that, and if I tab into object mode, you'll see that we now have two separate objects, and that's what we want. So I'm going to do that for the rest of these and have each individual part laid out individually. Okay, so now that we've got each part separated individually, we actually are going to have to separate other parts of these individual ones as well. So if I go into this one, this is the bottom of the hand texture, which is going to have to be down here. So we're going to have to separate that as well. So all I have to do is just click on that one, P to separate, then back into object mode, and then we're going to do this for all of these which have the part that goes on the bottom and it's attached to the top. So we're just going to detach those so that we can move them later on. Alright guys, so now that we've got everything separated the way we need it to be so that we can move things around, we can get started on building our little character here. So let's go ahead and save, Control S, and enter. And we're going to go into edit mode on our dang old head here, and we're going to just select some of these things. So what we're going to be doing is using the 3D cursor, this little thing down here. If you see it right there, that's what we're going to be using as our rotation point so that we can bend this to our will, basically. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to click on this and then this one. So as you can see here, our median point is right here between these two. So when I hit Shift S and I go cursor to selected, it's going to move that little cursor up here. Now you can right click or left click depending on how your Blender is set up and move that around, but this is going to be the most exact way. It's going to be right there on that line, and that's what we want. So now that we've got the cursor there, we're going to go ahead and go down here, and we're going to make our pivot point the 3D cursor. So now with that done, I'm going to select all the faces here on the side of the face, and then I'm going to hit rotate on the Z axis, going to hit the Z key, and then -90, and then enter. And as you can see, it bent that whole part back just like so. And then we're going to do the same thing here. I'm going to select these two, so our median point is going to be right there between there. Shift S, cursor to selected, and then I'm going to select all these faces, rotate, and this time it's going to be on the X axis, -90, enter. And then as you can see there, the top of his head is down. And then for this one, we're going to do just like that, the same thing. But for this one, we can actually, I'm going to hit A to deselect everything. We're going to select this whole bit here because this whole thing needs to go back. Rotate on the Z axis 90 degrees, not -90 because we're going the opposite direction. And then we're going to do the same thing here, cursor to selected, and then select the back of the head, rotate Z 90. And there you go. He's got a dang old 3D head. So now the next thing we need to do is apply the bottom of the head because it's way up here all by itself. And let's go ahead and save. We don't want that. So what we're going to do is actually get the origin of this object up here because this is what's going to be moved, basically, if you understand what that means. If you see this little orange, why did I say red? That little dot right there, that is the origin of this object. So for instance, let's say if I go to this set origin, this allows you to tell Blender where the origin for this object is. And basically, the way I would explain that is Blender sees the origin as where this technically is. Like this is where Blender is like, this is your rotation point. This is what represents where this mesh is in your scene, basically. So what I'm going to do is set origin. I'm going to go origin to geometry. You have all these other options here that we may use in the future, but for now we're going to go origin to geometry, so that way the origin will just pop right up there and it goes to the median point of that geometry, which is where we want it anyway, which is dead center. And that's pretty good. So now that we've got the origin there, we're going to rotate this. I'm actually going to take this. We could bring the 3D cursor over to it, but just for the sake of this, we're just going to go to the individual origins. So now you can see our rotation point is set around that origin. Rotate on the x-axis 90 degrees, enter. It could be -90 or 90, it doesn't really matter because you barely ever see that. So that one doesn't really matter that much in my opinion. Anyway, so we're going to select the head. We're going to come into edit mode, and what we want to do is use the 3D cursor to position this. So I'm going to go ahead and hit A to deselect everything. I'm going to go into edge select mode here. I'm going to hold the Alt key, and then I'm going to click one of the lines here, and as you'll see there, holding the Alt key made it select that whole ring of lines that are connected on the head object here. And as such, it puts the median point right there in the center of the head, which is where we want things to go. So we're going to hit Shift S, cursor to selected, and that's going to put the cursor right dangled there. That should be good enough for how we want it. Now we're going to tab back into object mode, and I'm going to select the bottom of the head, and I'm going to hit Shift S, and I'm going to say selection to cursor this time, and it's going to pop it right on over there, and that attaches it to the bottom, and you should be good to go there. So we're going to save that. And now the thing is, we have this head should be one object, but it's technically two because we had to separate that bottom to move it. So what I'm going to do is, with that bottom selected, I'm going to hold Shift and click the head. So now they are both selected, and I'm going to hit Control and J to join. And as you can see down here, it says join. That means something happened. Oh, there's my taskbar. We have selected both of those and joined them together. So now it is one mesh. When we go into edit mode, I'm going to go into face select. Now we can select the entirety of the head because they have been combined into one whole object. So now the final thing we need to do to finish the head here, basically it's done, but we do have a bunch of duplicated vertices. So I'm going to come down here and go into vertices select mode, and I'm just going to select, let's say back here. This is where we have several different vertices coming together to form this corner. And if I click G or press G to grab, and I do like this, you'll see that you can see inside of his head now, because these edges, these places here that we made, did not become joined together. They're all still individual vertices. So what I'm going to do is undo that, and we're just going to hit A to select everything, and then we're going to come down here to remove doubles, and I'm going to hit that button right there. There are shortcuts to do that, but we're just going to use the button. And now when I click on this and drag it around, as you can see, it remains a solid corner because we got rid of those extra vertices and it combined them all together, and now we have one solid mesh here that forms the head of our character. So that's pretty much all the steps there. We're going to go ahead and do that for the rest of these. I'll show you one more while we're at it, and then I'll do the rest in a speed up. So without explaining everything as much as I'm going, we're just going to go ahead and start doing the one over here for the body. So we're just going to hit tab, go in edit mode, then old face select. Gonna do like this, Shift S, cursor to selected, do like so. Make sure that we are on cursor as our pivot point, rotate Z, -90. Select this one, Shift S, cursor to selected, rotate on the X, -90. Shift S, cursor to selected, then we're just gonna select all of this, rotate Z, 90. Like this one. It doesn't really matter, by the way, which one of these you select. It's just the cursor needs to be on the Z axis, you know, right here, or on the Y axis in this case, I guess, right here, and then it'll rotate any way you want to. It doesn't matter whether it's on top or bottom or any of those things. So just gonna go ahead and do that, rotate Z 90, and there you go, you got that. Then we're gonna go into object mode, select this one. And let's stay in object mode, and then we're going to go to origin to geometry, rotate on the X, 90 degrees. We still have the 3D pivot point on our 3D cursor, so as you can see, it rotated kind of funky there, but that actually doesn't really matter because we're just going to be doing the same thing we did before, and we're just going to select this and hold Alt and click, and Shift S, cursor to selected, and then Shift S, selection to cursor, and then hold Shift, click on the body, Control J to join, tab into edit mode, select everything, remove doubles, and as you can see 13 vertices were removed, and there you go, there is the torso to the body. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of these. I'm going to save. I'm going to do the rest of these real quick, and then we'll hop back into how to assemble this into a whole character. Alright guys, so we've got the main pieces that we need. Now technically if I was making my own model, I would go ahead and do the same for these down here. But just for the sake of the tutorial, we're just going to duplicate these two arms and legs and make that our extra pieces. So I'm just going to come down here and select all this stuff, and we're going to hit X and delete it, and we should be good to go now. And I'm just going to go ahead and take the dang old leg here. I'm going to go ahead and bring the origin to geometry there. That's not exactly where we're going to want it to be in the end, but just so we have this set up, I'm going to hit Shift and D, and then drag this out on the X-axis by hitting the X key, and then we're going to do the same thing here. Let's set the origin to geometry, Shift and D, and then drag this out on the X-axis, just like so. Alright, so technically you could use this as a little thing, but sometimes the textures are reversed on the actual Minecraft characters, and yeah. So now that we've got all of our pieces, what we need to do is assemble them. So what I'm going to do is make this the root of our object, at least for, or root of our mesh, at least for this instance. So everything is going to be parented to the torso here. So what I'm going to do is just select everything here. I'm going to grab all these by holding Shift and clicking on them, and we're going to click the torso last, and then I'm going to hit Control P, and we're going to set parent to object. And there you go. As you can see, it's going to the origin point of this. So what we're going to do is just bring the origin to geometry, and that should be good to go there. And now we're going to position all these things to be in the proper place that we want them to be in. So what I'm going to do that is the same thing we've been doing using the 3D cursor, but instead we're going to be moving the objects just like we did for the bottoms of the other parts here. So what I want to do is first set the origin where they need to be, however. So in order to do that, I'm going to say so like a ton here. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to face select mode. We're going to come here. We're going to go Shift S and cursor to selected, just like we normally do. I'm going to hit tab to go into object mode, set origin, and origin to 3D cursor. So that sets the origin for this leg up here at the top. And we're going to do the same thing here. Shift S, cursor to selected, tab into object mode, set origin, origin to 3D cursor. So now they're right there where you want them to be. And we're just going to go ahead and parent those now. So the way we're going to do that is go to the torso, tab into edit mode, click on this one, Shift S, cursor to selected, tab out into object mode. Then we're going to take this and go Shift S, selection to cursor. Boom, just like so. And then we're going to go back to the torso, tab into edit mode, select this one, Shift S, cursor to selected, tab out, select this one, Shift S, selection to cursor. And boom, that perfectly aligns up. You can eyeball this if you want to instead of doing that. That sounds like a lot of steps, I know, but that really does make it easier in terms of making sure everything is perfectly aligned the way you want it to be. So for the arms, it's going to be a little bit different, and even for the head, so let's go ahead and do that. For the arms here, we want to make the rotation point, you can make it wherever you want. Let's say, for instance, if we want it to be perfect, we would go to this. We're going to hit Shift S, cursor to selected. There we go, almost forgot. And tab into object mode, and then origin to 3D cursor, and that puts it right there. And let's say that's going to be the left arm. So on this one, we're going to come over here, and this is going to be the right arm. Shift S, cursor to selected, set origin, origin to 3D cursor. So now for the left arm, I can tab into this, Shift S, cursor to selected, tab out object mode, Shift S, selection to cursor, and boom, it slaps it right on there. And that's how we want to do that. So go ahead and do this one. Boom. So as you can see, we now have the arms lined up. And the arms, if we go to rotating on the individual origins, when I rotate the arms here, they'll rotate on that point there, and this may be what you want. So if we wanted to change this and have it rotate kind of at the center of the arm, just in case that would be what you wanted to do, all you would need to do is tab into edit mode, and actually I already had that selected. Let's go ahead and select a piece of the arm. I'm going to hold Alt and click again, and with that there, it's going to make the median point right there in the dead center of the upper arm there. I'm going to hit Shift S, cursor to selected, and then tab into object mode, set origin to 3D cursor, and then that way it'll rotate like right there at the center of the arm. It really depends on how you want it to look. It doesn't really matter in my opinion, based on what kind of model you're trying to create. If this actually matters, you know, if you're doing bones and everything for the character, which is typically what people would do, then this makes no difference. But if you're going to try to just do some basic posing or whatever, then you could just leave it like this and have it rotate however you want. Alright, we got a little off track there, but let's go ahead and see if we can fix this up here. We're going to go ahead and select both of these, Shift S, cursor to selected, so that's where we want things to be. And then up here, we want the origin for our Steve head to be the very bottom. So I'm going to tab into edit mode. I'm going to select these. You could select all of them. It doesn't really matter, but the median point just needs to be right there, dead center. So actually, we missed a step there. Let's move the cursor over here. Tab into object mode. Origin to 3D cursor. There we go. Now we can do this one. Sorry about that. But it's already selected, so we'll just Shift S, cursor to selected, tab into object mode, Shift S, selection to cursor, boop. And there you go. Fully 3D Minecraft character from scratch, all from a single 2D image. And then when we grab this one here, I can hit G and grab them and drag them around. I can rotate them around if I want to. We can rotate the head, and since we're on the individual origins rotation point or pivot point, we can actually just animate the character in a very crude basic fashion here, just like so. And it's not too bad. Obviously the arms and things don't bend, the legs don't bend, there's no bending of the torso. It's technically, this is how a Minecraft character moves in Minecraft the game. So you could technically animate it this way. If you guys would like to know how to do that, like or see more of a fleshed out tutorial on animating a character this way instead of using rigs and bones and things, then let me know in the comments that you want to see it, and maybe we'll come back and revisit this style of Minecraft character in the future. And we'll do some other little things to tweak them and make things a little bit better and easier to animate maybe. Alright, so that's pretty much it, guys. That's the basic method that I would use. Let's drag him up and make him on the floor there. Anyway, so that's basically the method I might use to make a little 3D character. There's obviously better ways and more customizable ways. This is very crude, rudimentary, but I find it fun. I don't know why. It's a fun thing for me to do. I like doing it. It's interesting. You know, like what you see is what you get. I'm rambling. But anyway, that's going to be it, guys. Hope this tutorial was helpful. Hope it at least inspired you or enlightened you to some of the features in Blender and the way that you can use them to do things that you want to do. But that's it. So thanks for joining me, guys. Hope it was helpful. If you liked the video, feel free to hit the like button, comment, and subscribe to become a citizen today. Share it with your friends and your family and your pets. And I'll see you guys in the next video.